You're ready to start your own business, but you want to avoid all the costly mistakes that sink so many startups. It is possible, but how do you do it? Where do you even begin? It is possible. You just need the right help and guidance, and that's what you will find in the new book from entrepreneur, business strategist, and author Zach Brown, Smart from the Start. Avoid learning business lessons the hard way. Available on Amazon. Smart from the Start is a no-nonsense roadmap to building a thriving, successful business, avoiding all the trial and error. With this book, you'll learn why execution matters more than your idea, how to avoid cash flow disasters, and the secret to scaling a business that runs without you. If you're an entrepreneur, small business owner, or side hustler, Smart from the Start is your shortcut to success. Order your copy right now on Amazon. Available in Kindle, hardcover, and Kindle Unlimited. Smart from the Start. Avoid learning business lessons the hard way. From author Zach Brown.
I think a lot of it was, how do I shortcut this? How do I get to it? And then, kind of like the adult me now sitting here is like, wants to tell the younger me, there are no shortcuts. You gotta grind. You have to go through a lot of hard.
Hey, strong like bull. Yeah, strong like bull. Leveling up, gotta endure. Talking about being an entrepreneur. Zach Brown here to break it down like this. Gonna talk about the come up in the big jump with his guests and the lessons they learned.
Sean Eggers, welcome to Strong Like Bull. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, so we dig into 3 different sections here. 1, your origin story. I want to hear how you got here today, so you can start with your earliest memory. Then we'll dig into what made you make the jump and be an entrepreneur.
Sure.
Because it's not an easier life being an entrepreneur.
No.
And then we'll dig into your expertise and see if you can't teach me something new.
Okay.
Something that I don't know. So it's got to be some sort of like inside information or something like that. And then we'll tell the people how to find you if they want to utilize your service. Then we'll say adios.
Sounds good.
All right. So go ahead. You can dig in, start with your earliest memory, and I guess keep it relevant and all the way to how you got here today.
Yeah, sure. So I was born and raised in Manhattan Beach, California. Lower middle class family. This was before Disney Studios, obviously. So all the homes were very small. Earliest memory, I think, probably just driving around in the car with my mom for taking me somewhere to go play or to park or something like that. But some of my earliest fond memories are watching science fiction, watching Back to the Future, watching Star Wars, watching Star Trek and everything, and that got me really interested in science. So
Captain America.
Oh yeah. Heck yeah. Oh, the material that's made out of. I definitely went down the rabbit hole on that one once or twice. I would draw out these space vehicles, draw out these like science fiction things. I just had like a huge passion for that, which I think slowly led me into the sciences and got me interested in how things work, how things, function. But right around the time I started getting into the sciences, so like early puberty and stuff, I realized that, look, we were much poorer than the other kids around. Parents couldn't afford to take us out on vacation, couldn't buy us, new clothes, couldn't buy us, what have you. So, and then also just worried about, okay, well, in a number of years, I'm going to be going to college. How am I going to pay for it? Parents have money, that. So I think from not necessarily the earliest age, but only into young adulthood, I just had this drive to make my own way and have to be able to come up with my own foundation and method to getting to that goal. Because I wasn't going to be able to have rely on my parents to assist me. So going into the sciences after graduating high school, I went to community college originally to try to transfer to a 4-year university. I stayed there much longer than I should have, trying out different majors until I finally fell back on physics, because that seemed to be the thing I was best at and the thing I was.
Where was this at?
This is at El Camino College in Gardena. So going there, I met a number of professors that really just inspired me to be better, push harder, realize my potential. And so after a while there, I transferred to UCLA, where I finished up my bachelor's in physics. While I was there, a number of the TAs had been working on their PhDs for about 10, 11, 12 years. They were like, yeah, get into PhD physics. Like we're no closer than we are 10 years in than when we were a few years in. That kind of dashed my dreams of like going into just hard sciences career. But just so happens that later that week, there was a traveling speaker that was talking about various careers in physics, and they mentioned patent because they said that having a background and just focusing on how things work and methodology and what have you, the analytical side of just really exploring things is really well suited to that field because you're able to deal with a wide variety of technologies and kind of provide insight into that. I gave it a thought and then thought, well, maybe that should be my career path. But shortly before graduating, my dad passed away. I didn't have any life insurance, didn't have any money or anything like that. So that kind of slowed me down for like another. I just, looking after my mom, looking after my sister, went into just like a little bit of business consulting. I was really good with numbers, really good with Excel sheets, because that's how we did all of our, physics labs and what have you. And eventually just studied at night to take the LSAT, which is the prep test to get into a decent law school. Took that and then applied to USC. I figured, UCLA and USC are rivals. I might as well go for the other one, see if it's grass is green on the other side. And then went there. I got my law degree. And upon graduating, I started working in patent law for a number of years. Still to this day, love patent law. I still read patents a number of times a week. That's really something I've always really been interested in. I've always been interested in how things work. I love the field. Problem is that the amount of, and that's all to make somebody else rich. That's all to benefit somebody else. And look, I love the people I work for. They were very good to me. They passed on a lot of knowledge to me, and they were very supportive of my decisions. That combined with my son just being born, getting text from my wife early in the morning saying, "Do you actually want to see him grow up?" Kind of started making me think, okay, well, I'm probably not going to be having my own patent. It takes a lot of infrastructure, a lot of prior business and stuff like that. So it's not something you can just start off right. You kind of already have to be poised to be in the first place. And then plus with the amount of hours I was working, how was I ever going to plan? How was I ever going to try to put it together? What little time I had left, I was trying to spend it with my family. So my wife was actually a work competent. When we had kind of that part of, well, are we going to continue down this path, or are you going to think about something else? My main pushback was, I don't know how to do anything. I'm a patent attorney. I'm a scientist at heart. What else am I going to do? And she's like, well, why don't you do what I did? Never shown that much of an interest in comp before. She goes, no. She goes, I think that you'd be well suited for it, because she goes, you are very analytical, and this is a volume business. You deal with a lot of cases, but you have to go through details with medical. You have to go through case details. She goes, and you just zone in on these minutia that I think a lot of people kind of gloss over. She said, you have a personality that I think a lot of people like, and a lot of this business is based on relationships. So I decided to go on faith and take her advice, and went into doing work. I can't say that I loved it from the very beginning, but it is something that I did come to really enjoy once you kind of get it. I think whenever you do something new, there is that hesitation and fear of what you don't know, and just trying to learn as much as you can and get up to speed as quick as you can before you reach like comfort. And that's when you kind of maybe enjoy the ride. So for me, it took about, I want to say 3 to 6 months before I really started kind of going, hey, this is kind of fun. This is interesting,
Yeah, that's what I think too. That it's weird. I feel like I've said this on every podcast I did, but a lot of people that have sat where you're sitting now, have said that you should do what you love, which I think they have it backwards. I think you should get good at something and you will love it. I mean, just because, like you said, like you don't know that you could like it if you don't practice and like try it out. So I think some of the advice given to the younger generation is misguided, maybe, that try as many things as you can.
Yeah.
Until something kind of clicks, not that you love it, but that, hey, I'm pretty good at that, right? I mean, start baseball and you hate it, but your parents make you go to practice over and over and over again, and you hate it. Then one day you hit a home run, and you're like, oh shit. And then you make a diving catch, and then you strike somebody out, and then, you steal a base, and you're like, yeah, dude, this is awesome. But if you would have just followed the direction of do what you love before trying it out and practicing, you wouldn't have known that you could be good at something.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And that's actually my business partner, Leor, and I have talked about, because we have boys about the same age. And that is spot on the advice we want to give them when they're thinking about careers. Is this idea of, do what you love, do what you love. I feel like that's really missing. Like, look, do the thing that you like or, could eventually love, but you're good at. Get good at something. Develop a skill.
Okay, so so your wife was a work comp attorney. She got you into it. It took 3 to 6 months for you to like it. And then did you join a firm, or did you just start your own out the gate? Or
No, I joined a firm. I actually joined her law.
Okay.
And the people there were wonderful. They taught me a lot, helped me get up to speed on what work comp is and how to be an attorney. I do have to give my wife the credit that is due, because I would just ask her questions all the time. And
Who's the veteran? Trying to get you in trouble for good TV.
I'll tell you this: she is definitely the better litigator. Settlement, but we actually had a rule. She goes, I have to, you have to wait until I'm fully dressed before you can ask me work comp questions, because it would be like, first thing in the morning, and I'd be like, well, what happens if X, Y, and Z and everything? We'd be right in the middle of changing the baby.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife is a risk manager too for a large construction company, and we have a lot of construction clients where we write their insurance. So yeah, it's like dinner table talk is still work talk, which I like. That I just have one life. I don't have to separate the two. I like the overlap. I like the integration of the two. I do.
Yeah. So I started working for a firm. I learned a lot from them, but joining that firm, it was always in the back of my head of like, well, look, I like working with people. I like being part of a team and everything, but I always wanted to do something on my own. I think that kind of stems back from when I was younger. A lot of the really successful parents that were on my block, they weren't working for a person. They had their own thing. They had their own construction. They had their own accounting. They all did something, or I shouldn't say all, but most of them were entrepreneurs in one way, shape. Either they were an entrepreneur with their professional career, lawyer at a law firm, or they were just kind of went down their own path. So for me, I think growing up, it was like, well, I want to have that kind of life. The one common denominator was they all did something else. They didn't just work for the same company and make somebody else. They kind of all did their own thing. And I think what kind of kept my mind open to the possibilities was they weren't all entrepreneurs in the same field. They were all very different things, different backgrounds, and very different specialities. So I think for me, it's just like, hey, look, this is an entire world that, I didn't know about the risk associated at that time when I was a kid, but it was like, this is an entire world you can go into, and you're not limited to one thing. You don't have to just be a doctor and then have your own medical practice. You could go into law, and, go into writing, do that type of thing. So I think for me, it just kind of it was always in the back of my head as kind of like,
Okay. So let's back up a little bit.
sure.
So part of what I try to do is I try to show anybody that watches this that no matter what type of kid you are, there is a path to being an entrepreneur if that's what you want. And I want to expose all of those paths. I've had people on that have been in a boat, at 8 years old for 4 days and 3 nights coming over, escaping Vietnam, or people born in Mexico and coming to America and not even speaking any sort of English, or somebody that had a great childhood and grew up right here in Orange County and, wealthy parents. And all of them end up at the same location. So going back to your childhood, what kind of kid were you? Would parents of other kids say, "Hey, stay away from that Sean guy," or "Hey, you should invite Sean over, for a sleepover or whatever"? What kind of kid were you?
I was very much don't play around with that show.
Oh, okay.
that was very much me as a kid, and I
So troublemaker.
I think I never really got into trouble that much. Like I
I
was
just didn't get caught.
I was rowdy and rambunctious, and God has paid me back by giving me a son that's the exact same way. So that's where a lot of my frustration
Right.
comes from. But I was rowdy and rambunctious and everything, and then I think, to be honest with you, I think a lot of it also has to do with who, I was the poor kid on the block, and I think maybe a lot of it has to do with not wanting. So, but I definitely was rowdy around about this. Never got into fights. Never really bullied anybody. And to be honest with you, I was never really bullied myself either. But I was definitely a wild. It was very hard to kind of pin me down and have me kind of follow direction. But as I got older, there were enough.
10 boys are like that. Okay, interesting. So like what sort of hobbies or sports did you do as a kid? Did you play sports or did chess club or debate club or any of that stuff or?
No, in terms of sports, I never really did any sports other than playing with kids on the block. We would play touch football, tag football, or street hockey, that type of stuff. In terms of hobbies, I was always really into drawing and everything, but more having to do with schematics because at a young age I was really into sci-fi, so I would try to draw out the vehicles, figure out how they all worked, and then probably by 7 or 8 I got into amateur amateur rocket. So
Oh, okay,
starting out
cool.
as these rockets and stuff, and then kind of going up higher.
So you're a big SpaceX fan and
Oh, yeah.
NASA.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Okay,
Very
so I have a question.
Sure.
Did we go to the moon?
Yes.
For sure.
For sure.
Even we got through the radiation belt.
Yes. Yes. The Van Allen belt, it's actually at the speed that they're going, the exposure was very, very, short and everything. So they did receive a decent amount of radiation exposure, but the body is actually pretty good. I can
Or you turn into the Hulk.
go basically. But, part of it is it's so hard for even a few people to keep secrets. And when you think of just the thousands of people that were employed as part of that whole program, I think it's very, now that doesn't mean there are conspiracy theories that I don't believe. There are some out
I
there.
like a good conspiracy theory, as long as it's not hurting anybody.
Right.
So I think I'm on your side ultimately. I'd like to entertain the fun, but I always tend to come back to common sense that I can't speak out of one side of my mouth saying that everybody in government are a bunch of freaking idiots, and then speak out of the other side of my mouth and say, well, they're these geniuses that pull off these great feats of deception. So it's either one or the other. Are they idiots or are they geniuses? So I tend to go towards the latter, or no, the former. Yeah, the former. Okay, interesting. So, do you have a favorite sci-fi vehicle?
Oh yeah. Well, it's got to be and then a close second is probably an X.
Oh, okay. As long as it's not the Fantastic Four floating car. That thing's dumb. Interesting. Yeah, I like the X-Wing. Or the Star Wars flat one. What is it?
Was that the A-Wing?
No, the Han Solo.
Oh yeah, Millennium Falcon.
Millennium Falcon.
Yeah,
That's
a great
pretty
one.
legit. Or the what are the fighters called? Darth Vader fighters.
Oh, TIE fighters.
Yeah, those are awesome.
Those are really
I think they're cool.
Those are
Those are better than the X-Wings.
so the regular TIE fighters, they don't even have shields. They're more of throwaways, but the high bomber one that Darth Vader has hyperdrive.
Oh. I was just testing your geekness there. Yeah, I just feel like Luke Skywalker's always working with garage sale parts, and the dark side has all the nice stuff. Interesting. Okay, so so you said that you noticed parents of other kids that were successful. What do you think it is or it was about you as a kid that helped you notice that? Were you just very observant, or did you have any sort of guide or mentor or anything like that? Because again, some people that have sat here have said, yeah, I had this great template and example to follow. My dad had their own business or whatever. What was there, somebody specific that kind of stood out, or what was it about you that you admired that?
I think just starting off as a baseline, I saw what all of them had.
So their kids are walking in with Jordan shoes
Yes.
and, nice backpacks and
Exactly.
new stuff.
Nice cars, beautiful, redone houses and stuff. They would buy a lot. Manhattan Beach, most of the houses.
Where's Manhattan Beach?
Manhattan Beach is right next to Redondo Beach,
okay.
near Torrance and stuff. So
Gotcha.
It's a little like niche area and everything. I mean, it was most of the people that had moved there and were living there up until like the early 1990s were, blue collar people that were working for TRW, Boeing, a lot of the defense contractors that were there and stuff. Most of the homes had pretty big lots, but were all single story homes, maximum maybe 1,500 square homes. They were all kind of, small. And then when that became kind of like a niche area to live and Disney studios had moved in, you started seeing a kind of turnover of the people that were living there, less blue collar people, more people just buying the lots, tearing down the homes, and then building up these, huge McMansions and stuff. Yeah. So I think just kind of seeing what they had and what didn't have, at an early age, and relatively early age. I want to say 11, 12 years old. I really started kind of like paying attention because I'm thinking, well, look, when I'm 18, I need to go on college. I need to figure out a path. I need to figure out what I'm going to do. I don't know what I want to do yet. So it was for me, I wanted to kind of figure out, well, let me see what other people did and see if I could kind of follow in their footsteps. And there were so many different footsteps to follow because, when I would be over at the kids' houses and everything, I'd actually ask the parents, oh, what do you do? Well, how'd you get into that? Which college did you go to? And I realized that there was no commonality to the college, to the specialty. But I don't know, after a number of years of just kind of looking at that, one thing that was pretty common was they would all eventually go out.
Pretty impressive as a kid, dude, that you're able to look ahead in that respect. And maybe you weren't even thinking of it that way as a kid, but, looking back, that's pretty impressive kids nowadays can't see past, the next hour.
Yeah.
Let alone the next years or next phases of their life. But it seems like you were able to look ahead and know what was coming, that at 18, I got to have my shit together because there's not going to be that much support, at that stage.
Interesting.
Because, yeah, my vision really didn't come till way after. And it was like, it had to be into me. I feel like I had to learn a shit ton of hard lessons the hard way. And then, I finally got it.
So look, and to that end, I think one of the biggest, hardest learned lessons for me during this kind of like transition period was, I think a lot of it was, how do I shortcut this? How do I get to it? And then, kind of like the adult me now sitting here is like, wants to tell the younger me, there are no shortcuts. You gotta grind. You have to go through a lot of hard. And it's hard to kind of follow in somebody else's footsteps. It's good to be inspired. It's kind of good to kind of like, do that, but there are no shortcuts. And I think a lot of it for me was like, well, look, how do I get to where they are with the least number of movement and space? Especially, I was just going through life and realized you have to grind, you have to put in the hours, you have to put in the time, blood, sweat, tears.
Okay, so you guys started EM Legal back in 2022. Okay, you and Lior. Why would you do that? Right? I mean, because I say this on every episode too, I feel like, but being an entrepreneur is not an easier life. There's no such thing as a 40-hour work week. In the beginning years, no such thing as holidays or weekends or 401k match or, health insurance support, paying 50% or 75% or 100% of it. It's, you don't have all of these, unlimited resources. You have 100% of the liability. You could lose everything. Why the hell would you start your own company?
It's interesting.
Like actually make the jump that day. Like what was part of the thinking process? Do you think you had it figured out? Like you thought ahead enough? I did enough research. This is a calculated type of gamble, or was it fuck it? Like let's try, and then if not, I got and B.
It was a little bit of both in a way. I mean, what I want to say is it was something that I think both of us individually were thinking after you kind of see how a law firm works and you kind of see what it takes to run it, what it takes to, do that. It's like, well, eventually you start thinking, I think I can do that. I can, when you're an attorney, in a way, you eventually kind of become your own partner. You have clients that want to work with you, that want to give you business. Now it goes to the benefit of the law firm, but you kind of pseudo become your own like little mini partner, mini little, universe over there. Anyway, but it was something that I was certainly thinking about for a while of like, well, look, if I had to start my own law firm or do my own thing, work comp would probably be, one of the easiest ways for me to do that because you do get your own clients. You do get people that want to work solely with you. So if I wanted to kind of do that on my own, that could, facilitate. So it was something I was thinking about for a while. Had not really done any major planning.
So if you were giving advice to somebody coming up, in college or whatever, that how to go about becoming an entrepreneur, because you're an attorney, dude. You're not flipping burgers, right? You're probably making pretty good money as an attorney, I would think. And so whenever you started your company, like, did you have this big, nest egg of like, treasure chest of, I don't know, lawyer cash that, bought you a year or two or three? Like, would you recommend somebody become financially stable prior to taking that gamble, or did that play a factor at all?
It definitely was a major factor. Absolutely. What I will say is that if you want to wait until you think you're ready, that day will never. You're never going to feel like you're 100%. You just have to kind of, make the leap when you feel most comfortable with it. And that comes down to, individual preference. Leora and I were very lucky in that both of our wives are attorneys. To start talking about possibly doing this, they were very supportive, and they're like, well, look, we'll work the day jobs so that, we're able to pay the mortgage and, to keep the lights on and have the health benefits. And then you guys just try to see, how long it'll take to start turning profit. So we had a really good support base. We didn't really have too much money set aside in terms of like a nest egg. We had, our home line of credit and, some savings.
You were willing to put things at risk. You said home line of equity, right? HELOC, home equity line of credit.
We had that as
Just in case.
a reserve, just in case. But the kind of the unique position is that I never really felt we were putting necessarily everything at risk because I'm a worry. I worry about all these.
Only the paranoid survive.
So I worry about it. Our wives told us, and I would always tell us, is like, worst comes to worst, this is a stupid venture. And we end up just, putting out some applications and we'll get hired in, about a week because there's always a demand for it. So the idea was like, look, if worst comes to worst, we can always just, do that. So there really wasn't too much of I want to say like risk involved with it. But we were, we certainly were, not concerned, but there really was like a feeling of this could take for us to, because none of us, we had no prior experience in having our own business or, certainly starting our own law. So it's like, I don't know. Nobody ever told us how long it took for them to, but we don't know how long it's going to take for, the invoices to get paid. They get paid in a month, they get paid in 6 months. So there was certainly a lot of concern.
Yeah, collection. That's one of the hard lessons.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Gosh, people are horrible paying bills. Just saying.
Yeah. That's very true.
That is a ginormous challenge. What we got going on too is that we have invoices from over a year old, some 2 years.
And everyone's different. We have some clients that pay within 2-3 weeks.
Oh yeah,
some clients that pay honestly whenever they feel like it. So
yeah, and they have the leverage too. Like there's much you can do, but you're not going to threaten, Walmart. Well, that's interesting, man. That would you say that your path to being an entrepreneur is a traditional one or a traditional one, or
I think for the workers' comp universe, I think it's pretty traditional. I think a lot of people that end up becoming applicants counsel or defense attorneys that I think regardless of the path, they almost always will work for somebody for a number of years and then at some point realize, hey, I think I can do what they do. And then they just kind of break off. I know a number of applicants attorneys that used to be defense attorneys, that a number of defense attorneys that used to be applicants attorneys. That just kind of, you kind of go through the grind, you kind of see how things, work, and they eventually go, look, I'm willing to make the jump and take the risk.
okay. All right. So can anybody take the bar?
Well,
Or do I have to go to law school?
so I think I never really looked into that. I think you do have to have some sort of background, some sort of like undergrad background, where you have to have gone to a university or college or something to get some sort of accreditation
Or have like a fellowship? Right?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that what it's called, a fellowship or internship?
something like
I
that.
think it's like 3 years or 5 years.
Yeah,
At a law firm.
so hypothetically, if somebody was coming out of high school, they couldn't necessarily just go, take, you just have to have some sort of undergraduate and then be able to get through some sort of either law school or be able to do that. I think the state recently did this thing where instead of sitting for the bar, you intern at a law firm that's able to sign off on like various like things, and after a certain amount of time, they'll basically be able to clear you as being. They're trying to make taking the bar and then law school more accessible to law.
It's all 4 or 5 years.
It's all hard work. That's really.
Well, that's dumb. Because I just want to go take the test. I'll figure out how to pass the test.
I think you'd
Like that.
pass.
I'm sure I would, but like I don't want to have to go to law school. Like why? At least that's my experience with regular school. I don't use a single thing I learned in the classroom of college or high school or anything else other than writing. All of my lessons came from baseball or, out scraping my knees and falling off my bike and, getting up, dealing with adversity and communication in sports and, learning how to lose, learning how to win, teamwork, leadership, like all of those things came outside the classroom. So I guess that's I'm jaded. So I don't want to go into debt, going to law school. Oh, so that's my next question. How'd you pay for all this? How'd you pay for law school and scholarship?
Really, really good question. So for undergrad for UCLA, I managed to get a number of scholarships. I basically went there for free. So luckily, even though, my dad passed and that was a pretty traumatic thing, both financially and also, emotionally, I didn't have any debt hanging over. So that was a godsend. I'm really grateful. For law school, however, I did need to go into, but I also felt like there's a certain amount of fire it lights under your butt when you're kind of taking out this, financial responsibility, and it helps you take things a little bit more serious. And I think kind of narrow your focus on more like, problem solution. Like, sure, there are different, maybe legal fields that may have taken my fancy besides patent law, but it's like, once you're taking out that loan, it's like, okay, well, I need to get a job.
Right.
I need to get a job because I'm going to have this amount that I need to pay per month. And that's not including the living expenses and all those other things. The whole reason I did this was to have a better life. So what's the delta? How much do I have to make for this to make sense? And then, so you kind of start thinking in those kinds of terms.
So why did you, I have a couple more questions, but
Sure.
Why did you want to be an entrepreneur? Was it the money? Was it the freedom or why? Like what's your driving?
I think it's probably an equal mix of the two. I wanted to be able to be the one calling the shots. I didn't want anyone on top of me just kind of saying do this, do that, or making me do things I didn't, necessarily agree with. Not necessarily true because your client is always king, so you still get told what to do. But it's definitely I wanted that kind of environment. And also, it's like, well, look, I saw the kind of money that they were, and it was like, well, look, not that money is everything, but if I'm capable of doing the same thing, why wouldn't I want the same thing for my family? Why wouldn't I want to set up the same thing for my kids? So that's kind of the 50% drive. The other percent was I really dig fun. Rise and fall.
Yeah, I'm that's the way I was too. That's the way I was too. And it's never been about the money for me. And because 100,000 to me is the same as 100 million. Like my lifestyle would not change. I still eat SpaghettiOs and Lunchables and like I'm a simple dude. But yeah, I like building things, not buildings, but companies. I like moving quickly. I like making decisions quickly. And if you have several layers of management above you, it's very slow. So I'm a golfer. Do you golf? So I'm a golfer, and there are two types of golfers, at least once you get to like the pro level. There's somebody like a Bryson DeChambeau. You know who that is? Okay. So this guy will look at a putt and he'll say, okay, it's 17 degrees this way and, length of 27 feet and, so I need 72% power, blah, 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 right? Very calculated and analytical, I guess. Very data-driven type of golfer. And then there's somebody like a Tiger Woods. And not one is better than the other. Well, obviously one's better than the other, but the types of golfers, not one better than the other. But a Tiger Woods type is a feel golfer. Like he'll stand and like, all right, there's a tree. I'm going to try to wrap it around here. Where Bryson DeChambeau would be like, okay, the tree is 17 feet away and I need a 37, degree, draw to wrap around and land in the fairway at 99 yards, which is my approach wedge, which will land me on the green hole. I feel like there is the same in attorneys because I deal with several attorneys, that there are people that know the book inside and out, and there are some that know people inside and out. What do you feel like you are? What category? Or do you even agree with that assessment?
No, I agree with that. I agree with that. I think I'm more data driven as an attorney. When I'm advising my clients of what I think they should do, it's based on, estimated PD, future medical care, risk, litigation costs, and all that. And so a lot of that guidance comes from what is the cost mitigation? How do we make this as, cheap as possible? Because, generally in just work comp, there are take nothings here and there, but most of the time, the insurance. So our job is to try to mitigate that cost as much as possible, keep it as low as possible. And that I do. I just go through, data. Now a little bit comes into play of like, depends on the attorney on the other side. Like, well, I know this person. They never settle, so just dig in the heels. We're just going to be litigating this for a while. Or, hey, I know this person. They like to settle. Let's try to do that. And if it's, if it makes sense, it makes sense.
Okay, yeah. So let's dig into your expertise a little bit.
Okay,
because I want to learn some new stuff, and that's a good segue because I am more of a feel player, which I think that somebody like me needs somebody analytical to kind of balance out, right? It's not all gamesmanship. You actually need some content, some substance behind your argument. But, my personality in workers' compensation is absolutely let's set up surveillance on this guy because his daughter's birthday is coming up or the holidays are coming up or whatever, right? Or, let's put a videographer in the deposition and, bring some like big lights in there if you got to put the pressure on this guy to not lie or whatever, right? It has nothing to do with workers' compensation law. It's the gamesmanship of the whole thing, right? So when you set up a deposition, not you personally, I guess, just generally speaking, have you seen several different approaches into going into a deposition, like line of questioning? And I know it's case by case. Are there different styles? So like when you're recruiting an attorney, you can categorize some people to figure out, what
Right.
kind of player you're going to have on your team.
Right. I believe that there is. And it really comes down to one or two categories. Good cop, bad. I've known several attorneys, especially when I was learning, trying to figure out what my style is, what works great for me, come across as bad cops. Those are the ones that are more stern, that have tougher questions, that push back hard and are aggressive. And then there's a guy that's a good cop, that is very friendly, very nice, listens, doesn't really push too hard. And there are pros and cons to both, but I think there's one approach that's super.
Catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar.
I have yet to see or hear of somebody being bad cop leading to amazing testing.
Do you think that is because the system naturally leans towards the injured worker? And so like
Yes.
you can be as hard ass as you want. System's not going to change.
Right. Yes, for that, but also at the end of the day, all they have to say is, I don't remember.
Or I was having a good day.
I was having a good day. I don't remember. Sorry, I don't remember. And because of the system that is very pro injured worker.
Well, brother, you just gave all of California a fucking cheat code there.
Well, you can cut this part out.
Sorry, and I got to remember what you said. I got to remember what you started. I interrupted you.
But yeah, so but that is, that's one approach that can kind of go about it. But the better way is to be the good. A lot of injured workers want their story, and a lot of times this is the first time that they're really explaining or airing their grievance, and so it's kind of like therapy. I've had it many times because a lot of times injured workers will also file psych claims that the environment produce psychological disorders, sleep, eat, what have you. And so you have to go into a section called outside stressors. What else is going on in their life? What else went on in their history that could influence that? And so, in a way, by being kind of open and everything, one, you get really good testimony, but also two, I think that helps actually facilitate case moving forward, and also seven.
Yeah, I'm probably just not very good with my emotions. Yeah, like as soon as somebody goes and gets an attorney, I mean, you are suing your employer. You're not suing the insurance company, you're suing your employer. And I realize some of them may be misled by some applicant attorneys, but I don't know. It's always been very black and white to me. And I take offense to it. I mean, even especially as an entrepreneur, that maybe I'm just not able to get over that. If you're suing us or, the employer, for, whatever, don't feel sorry for you anymore at this point. Like it's game on. Prior to that, hey, all right, we're here to take care of you or whatever, and I'll hear you out. And hey, if you had some issues going on, then we can work with that. Now, not every employer does. I get that. And there are legitimate reasons to get litigated sometimes. But generally speaking, once you get litigated, man, it's all right, game on. This is a boxing ring, it's you against us. I think that I, as an attorney, if I was an attorney, this is not legal advice, that I feel like I would just be the you can't handle the truth type of attorney, which, like you said, is probably the inferior style to produce favorable results.
Well, let me actually just clarify this. The good cop, bad cop is just how you conduct yourself at deposition. You can absolutely be, you can't handle the truth type of attorney and being aggressive. And that's a lot of the tactics that I write for my clients. But be the good cop during deposition because you're able to get more favorable testimony. You're more likely to catch them. You're more likely for them to over-explain something and stuff that leak. And, before and after the deposition, you can then say, look, let's get surveillance.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I highly recommend. And I recommend this to every single one of my clients that do this, is have an employer witness at the position.
Yeah.
Keep them honest.
Yeah, we're big on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we take the sour patch kids approach sometimes with like examiners, first for sour things. Interesting, dude. Okay, so let's talk about any like inside info. Like, what's it like at is the work comp system is completely separate from like murder cases?
Oh yeah, it's
And
completely different from criminal ownership, and it's its own little niche world. I don't want to make it sound like it's not formal, because it is. You obviously have
I've heard of some judges walking in with some like Hawaiian shirts and sandals.
That's usually on Fridays when it's not their calendar days. That happens. But by formal, I mean, you obviously have to say, your honor and do all that. But it's a lot more informal than I think for a lot. A lot of times, when we think of, civil or criminal, we think law and order, where, people are fighting. It's probably like that in that world, but not in work comp. A lot of times the judges just want to try to get the parties to settle, try to get the parties to agree on things. Trial.
Why though? Why? Like, why isn't it more combative? Because I see this as an extremely serious issue that an employee is suing their employer. And again, this may be because I'm an entrepreneur, I've been an entrepreneur for a while, that I just take such offense to it. Like, this is very serious. And if I was in a dismissive type of environment that is heavily leaned towards the injured worker, I don't know, man. Have you ever read Atlas Shrugged?
Yes.
I feel like the system leans against the producers and for the consumers. And I don't know, that just really bothers me. I don't know.
Well, I think a lot of it comes from that, there are most of the people that file claims were injured in some way, shape. There's a lot of exaggeration in the business. There are fraud claims that come across,
Easy with that F.
Yeah. They do happen in this industry, but I want to say that while there is, some exaggeration that happens, I want to say most of the time there is actually some injury that's, so that at least that borderline base issue of, was this person injured working for this employer? That question is answered. So it's a matter to, nature and extent, or, which body parts were actually injured and everything. It certainly does get combative. There certainly are times where, especially if you're challenging AOE, COE, rising out of employment, and you're questioning whether or not this actually happened. It gets combative, especially when you have the applicant testifying at trial that they were hurt, and then you have employer witnesses that you call as witnesses saying, this person never complained to me, I never said they were hurt. We check on them regularly, asking if everything's okay. And then, it's.
Oh, people would hate me as an attorney.
I think you should.
Yeah, I am not there to make friends. Yeah, that's interesting, man. Do you like being an attorney?
I do. Yeah.
Like, as a profession, you like being an attorney?
I do. It's it has its own pros and cons. I think the main pro is I like helping. And so when, these employers that I know for, very long time, that I work with pretty closely, when they need help, I like being able to provide them.
Those skills transfer pretty easily. I mean, say 10 years from now, you don't want to be in work comp. Could you go be a criminal attorney or civil attorney?
I think,
or would that require additional?
I think it would require, you'd have to kind of get yourself kind of acclimated to it, because you're going to have your own set of rules, procedures. You have to get familiar with the law again and then everything. But the skills do, transfer. I mean, you are analyzing things, you're interpreting things, and you're, applying them to various cases.
Is there a lot of that you do, or even if it's, dictated, but I feel like, I don't know. I just hate attorneys. Like after I read a legal document, oh, I'm like, what an asshole. Like, why, why use 20 words when 5 will do?
Yeah, that's obnoxious.
It is.
That's obnoxious. There is a lot of writing, but what I've always kind of recommended to other attorneys, especially attorneys that we hire, is keep it succinct and keep it straight. Don't try to be cute. You're not writing War and Peace. You're not trying to do that. Just make it so that it's easy to follow, but you're just getting to.
Do you think that attorneys do that because maybe they think that it would provide additional credibility to them? Like, oh, they sound smart. So I mean, even my partner, Josh, love you to death, Josh, but like he'll use some $5 words or $10 words. And I'm like, dude, like, why did you say drinking apparatus? Like, why didn't you just say cup?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, when I talk to other attorneys that do different types of law, I feel like that is a lot more prevalent in that, especially in like civil, where you try to be like the loudest person in the room and really kind of do that. Workers' comp is like a little bit different. When we're writing letters, it's mostly to our own adjusters, and they know the game. So you're not gonna try to over exaggerate certain things. They're gonna know the guy dropped the cup and then he hurt his back. You don't need to try to throw a cute language.
So if you need legal work done with your business, say you want to write up a contract for some independent contractor or something like that, or an employment contract, do you write your own? Do you feel like you're well versed enough to be able to write your own, or do you also go out and get like a specialist in that field?
It hasn't come up yet. We've largely done our own stuff, just because we're kind of been like, well, we're small enough at the time anyway, that we can kind of like limp through this. We're attorneys. We can kind of just read over, some samples and then just kind of interject and do that. But chances are, as we kind of like, scale up, we're going to have to get people that specialize in it, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I guess that was the root of my original question about like skills transferring over and stuff. Like, do you save money on legal bills by doing your own? All right. So interesting. So what would you say that, well, let me ask you this. Do you have any sort of inside info that I'm not doing a good job of pulling out of you that you think I don't know about?
No, you're doing a pretty solid job. Inside info in terms of like advice or like, some suggestions or.
Yeah, anything. It's just something I don't know. That's the whole goal here, is to learn something new.
See, you already pushed for the employer witness. That's the number one thing I have to recommend out there, is having an employer witness at Depositions. I see some pushback on it going on, and I really don't think people realize how much of a godsend it is, how much it assists the case. I really have to hammer that home, that it keeps the applicant more honest, and it really helps facilitate settlement talks and settlement at the time of that decision. A lot of times when the applicant shows up, if they see a person they know is going to call out on their BS, that's going to advise the attorney what they're doing. A lot of times just that sheer nervousness of going, okay, well, I can't exaggerate as I thought I had. I had this game plan I came up with last night. It a lot of times you're able to get really good, favorable settlements out of that. At the very least, get testimony that's extremely favorable to the employer, because it keeps them. A number of the employers that I work with very closely are, on that page. All depositions in person, employer witness there. We're perfect. We have our game plan. But there are some that kind of have like a pushback. Well, but the manager's busy. It's like, well, this is really important. This is just maybe 2-3 hours of time that will pay dividends for this.
Okay. So walk me through a day of being an attorney. Like everything from, what time do you get in the office or start work, to how much time do you spend doing your billing? How much time do you spend attorneying? How much time do you spend dictating and, what percentages out of the office, like out in the field, doing depositions or trial or, shaking hands and kissing babies. And like, what does being an attorney look like? If somebody wants to if you're going to sell being an attorney to somebody, like what's a typical day look like?
Yeah. Um, most attorneys I know start relatively early. I drop off my son at his school, and then I'm usually in the office by 8 o'clock. I want to say a large amount of your time, certainly as a workers' comp attorney, is answering and responding. Workers' comp, you get tons and tons of calls from adjusters, from employers, from applicants, counsel. So if you want to be an attorney, you just really have to make peace with getting, 50 to 80 emails a day responded.
So 50 or 80 that you need to respond to. Okay. And then are you doing the keystroking or?
Pretty much all the attorneys that I know, they may dictate letters to the clients. You respond to so that,
Okay. So tons of emails. That's how you would describe being an attorney. What else?
Tons of emails, lots of phone calls. I don't want to say that I spend too much time, especially since I'm one of the founding partners. I don't spend a whole lot of time doing depositions. I want to say about maybe 2 or 3 depositions a week. A lot of them are remote via Zoom. So some of them are in person. You have like hearings, a couple hearings a week. Very rarely do I go to trial. Most of the time, because my style is to try to push for settlement and everything.
What is a hearing?
So a hearing is what you have before you have a trial. So for example, you have multiple different types of hearings. You can have an expedited. Expedited hearing means case is accepted and you need a really quick turnaround on a lot of hearings. They take a few months to get on calendar before you're actually going to be heard before it. Expedited hearing, it's a matter of just a few weeks.
And what takes place at a hearing?
So you and the other side will appear before a judge.
For what though? Like what are you guys fishing for from a judge? What is he going to do?
But the judge is going to make a decision on a dispute. So for example, for an expedited hearing, an applicant's attorney will file an expedited hearing. Almost always it's an applicant's attorney on temporary disability. The insurance
so if something was denied.
Oh, well, for expedited, it's accepted. But on temporary disability, it has to be like, well, this is an accepted case. There's a medical report saying this person can't work. Why isn't the insurance paying out temporary disability?
Oh, there are situations like that where a case is accepted, but they're not paying TTD.
But a lot of times it comes from some sort of miscommunication. I had an expedited hearing last week on this, where the applicant's attorney filed an expedited hearing for temporary disability benefits on a case where the guy is released to full duties. For those of you out there, it's like temporary disability means it's a wage replacement. It means that this person, because of an injury that took place at work, but the injury is accepted, the insurance admits that this injury happened, and a doctor has deemed that this person is incapable of working normal duties. They have some sort of restrictions.
So they get to sit at home and collect 2/3 of their paycheck.
Now, when somebody is deemed to work full duties, that's a different story. A doctor basically says that this person can work full duties. No temporary disability is owed. If the employer hasn't offered them to come back to work, doesn't matter. You can work full duties. You can go out there and get any job you want. There is no medical restriction on what you can do in terms of movement, weight restriction.
Result in a closed claim?
Well,
if you're not hurt.
Well, here's the thing. It could mean that this person was hurt, and there could be some, maybe permanent disability associated with it. But the circumstances that happens usually means this person may have gotten hurt, but it's not that.
Okay. So not enough to keep them from working, but there's still damage there. Okay.
I know.
So
I don't look at you right, my friend. I know.
Let's talk about that, because in the real world, there are 3 categories. 1, you're sore. 2, you're hurt. Or 3, you're injured. And that's just come from like a sports background, right? If you're sore, you're playing. If you're hurt, you're playing, especially if it's an important game. If you're injured, then you're on the injured reserve list. Like those are I guess the whole world doesn't live by those, but okay.
Now, these,
See, I feel like this is just one grain of sand of the just government in general systems
yes,
that clog up the machine. Situations like that. There's no reason for any claim to be open if somebody is working full duties.
well, so let me give you kind of a breakdown of how this case is, because you're right about that, and I think it has to come down to bureaucracy.
Yeah, and I don't think people understand. So
Yeah.
each person has an attorney that it's costing money. No offense. That claim has an adjuster, which costs time and energy and money. But that adjuster reports to a supervisor who has to spend time on it, and then they are charging the insured money, insurance companies, to adjust these claims, and then they are charging the employer money, premiums, and they have to charge whatever their overhead is, right? It's just like a domino effect, like upstream and downstream, that I don't think anybody gives a shit about. And I sit at the ultimate downstream.
Yes.
Like,
yeah,
where the employer is, and everything comes down to them.
right. No, that's a really good point, and there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, this circumstance is one of the more rare circumstances where the incident, we know it happened. We can gather that, okay, we can call it an injury that happened, so it's an accepted injury, but they've basically recovered from it. But a doctor doesn't say that they fully recovered from it. They said that, look, they've been released to full duties, and at this stage we need to escalate to a qualified medical examiner, which is what we're doing in this case, to offer the ultimate opinion. So it comes down to this little niche thing of like, we admit that an injury happened, but we're disputing nature. We're going to be pushing for, this guy might have gotten a little bit sore, as you put it, but they should be at 0%. 0%. They've recovered. They're fine. There shouldn't be any future medical care associated with it, and that is something we would try to push to take.
So I have 3 questions.
Sure.
So I have a bad tendency, maybe, that I try to identify inherent conflict. So I think that there's an inherent, for example, there's an inherent conflict with insurance companies and their promise to insureds, maybe the assumption to insureds. So I've worked for insurance companies and even been told by CEOs of insurance companies that we want these claims open as long as possible.
Yeah.
So think about it. So every CEO of every insurance company is a Wall Street person. They are not an insurance person. None of them. Zero.
Really?
Zero. And so the work comp system, say in California, they haven't the work comp line of business has not generated a profit in 20 years, but they're all hungry for more. Why? Because they operate as a bank. They just want as much premium dollars as they can get to invest. So last year or 2 years ago, I don't think the stats are out from last year. 2 years ago, the work comp system lost $22 billion. But if you take those dollars that lost $22 billion, there was a profit of, I want to say, $47 billion in investment income. So if you give me $100 as premium, you buy an insurance policy, a work comp policy from me for $100. And then, say a couple months go by and you have a work comp claim that costs $50. Now, if I pay out quick, I now only have $50 to invest, where I was investing $100 for 3 months. And now I have to pay a $50 claim. But we drag that out another 6 months. I get to invest $100 for another 6 months, and then I'll pay out $50. So there's an inherent conflict in what they claim to employers that, hey, we want to shut these things down as quickly as possible for as little as possible, and what their true mission is that they'll never say out loud. But they will do things that are hidden and blanketed, right? It's not an acute type of, they're not acute type of strategies. Let's extend this claim out for a year. What they'll do is a new CEO will come in and they'll say, okay, adjuster's diary system is every 30 days, right? We're putting a new diary system in where you have to check on the claim every 60 days. They just doubled their income because they get to invest. They just
Yeah.
extended the life of those claims and they get to invest their money for twice as long. Inherent conflict.
So I'm learning stuff today from you. Thank you for that.
Another inherent conflict is with my industry, being a broker, that I get paid 10% of your premium, yet you hire me to lower your premium. So on the surface, why the hell would I want to do that? So there are some inherent conflicts that, it obviously you have to consider, your ethics and, hey, we're in this for the long term, not, just 1 year, blah, 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 right? But we have a lot of clients where we get paid off of performance. All right, so we'll come in and you're paying $1 million for work comp. If we're able to reduce your premium to 600,000, I just saved you 400 grand. So instead of me getting 60,000 for the $600,000 premium, I want half of what I saved you. I'm willing to bet on myself and make more or make less if I don't do my job. But yeah, there's a conflict with me working for employers but getting paid by the insurance company.
Interesting.
Is there anything like that in the attorney world? I'm not asking your specific billing practices or anything like that, but is there anything like that in the lawyering world?
In terms of conflict,
I can think of one that I mentioned earlier to you.
the billing.
The transportation or the travel.
Well, yes. So part of that thing. Yeah. So one of the things that we talked about a little bit earlier was that we've certainly seen in our practice that we've heard at other firms that if a attorney has two cases at the same board, they'll bill travel twice for each respective. Luckily, I want to say this, working at the firm that I worked at previously, they really instilled this degree of ethics when it comes to billing. There's always more things you can do to bill for, but one thing you never want to risk is your bar license, because you're never going to make money if you get that thing.
That's an accepted practice, though, isn't it?
We have, when I working for somebody, whenever I would have something similar, that we'd have multiple cases at the board, the way we always did it, and this is how we do things over at AM Legal as well, is that we always split the travel. So, for example, if something takes you an hour and a half for a round trip travel to a board to do these, two things for different clients, we always split it down. Or if it's three, say if you have three walkthroughs, 1/3 each way. The idea being is that, one, that's how long it actually, took you. It didn't take you 4.5 hours to do this, all that. But also, if you get called up before the California State Bar, will you be able to, in all honesty, tell them that, oh yeah, I did these 3 round trips to the exact same board, in front of, the exact same judge. It's something that, I think probably does happen.
It absolutely happens.
That absolutely happens. But again, luckily the firm that I worked for, they were always very ethical in the way they told things. You'd ask that question. You'd say, oh, well, if I've got 2 different cases, how do I bill for the travel? They go, split it right down the middle.
Yeah. Well, I think that makes you different. I think that makes you better. But yeah, I know for sure firms do that. Some firms do that. Yeah. I mean, it's just character, right? Like, what do you do when nobody's watching?
Yeah. But it's also, it's
because I don't think that would get you in trouble with the board. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that would get you in trouble. I think that's probably an accepted practice that, hey, it's not going to get me in trouble, but it doesn't mean that it's not wrong.
Well,
that's not how you would want to be treated if you were paying an attorney.
No, true. But I think something like that would get you in trouble with the state bar, because you're doing unethical billing practice. You're billing for time that actually it did not take you. Now,
but if you look at it on a case, so if you silo the cases, I think that there is an argument to do it, to say, hey, for case A, I did drive to the board. For case B, I did drive to the board. For case C, I did drive to the board.
Right, but you drove to the same board for all three A, B, and C cases.
Well, you can't. Yeah, I just, I'm not saying that it's right that they should. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah,
That you can't judge batches of cases like that. I bill per case, not batch cases. I don't group, United Airlines with my Google cases. I just don't. There's no overlap in billing. There's none of that. I bill for what I do for this case and what I do for this case.
well, so here's the counter argument to that. The counter argument is that we all bill based upon the day, how we put it in our book. If, for example, you were to get maybe an audit from the California State Bar, say there's a complaint or something, and you print out the billing, you're going to have somebody that goes through your daily billing, and they're going to go through different cases. Yes, you didn't batch them. You went to the Anaheim board on 3 cases for that same day. You billed travel. All you need is one instance of that to then get called before the state bar. No matter what the possible outcome is, even if it's, it's only about a 10% chance they'll revoke your bar license. Otherwise, they'll just do that.
I don't want to be on their radar at all.
I don't want to be on their radar. I don't want to be that. And I certainly don't want anybody working for me to be that. So that's why it's, look, play it safe. Better safe than sorry. Be ethical. Don't put anything in your billing that you would not be personally willing to testify before the California State. It's the easiest way to.
So within the guardrails that are currently applied by the state bar, is it possible to bill more than 24 hours in one day?
No, I don't. So
is that the way you look at it? To say, look, you worked 8 hours today or 10 hours today. There's no way in hell that you should be able to turn in more than 10 hours of billing. Am I missing it? Are there, roundups or whatever that take place in the industry? Not you and your firm specifically, but just because I know some requirements are like 200. So whenever somebody's hiring somebody, there is a range of billing requirements.
right.
There's 200 hours, which is probably around how much they work, right? So like 50 hours.
Yeah.
So that seems, legit to me. It seems more legit on the surface. There are some that require billable hours in a month.
Yeah, that's.
And I've had some people, because we own a recruiting firm.
Yeah.
And I've had some attorneys like, yeah, I'm billing almost 400 a month.
Yeah. So to me, something like that either means, and I look, I've known a few attorneys that are like this, that are truly workaholics. That
still, there's only so many hours.
There's only so many hours in a day. But again, I've known people that truly did, no kids, not married. They like the money and they like the bonuses. So they would work 7 days a week and just work nonstop. They'd be working at 8 o'clock in the morning up to 7 o'clock at night. There are things that, as part of the whole billing thing, that, not necessarily rounding up or anything like that, but you can kind of
Well, I guess my example of that is if you spend 30 minutes writing a letter to somebody, you bill an hour. And if somebody, and then the next half hour, you spend 30 minutes writing another letter to somebody and you bill an hour, you bill 2 hours and 1 hour of work. Right, 30 hours for this letter, 30 hours for this letter, but 2 different clients, and we bill by the hour. We don't bill by the half hour.
No, so at my prior law firm and at legal, we bill in 0.1s.
Oh, wow.
So we bill in 6-minute increments. So for example, and the lowest minimum one is the president. So for example, like first thing in the morning when I'm, looking through my emails and everything, looking through an email from an adjuster and stuff, that's a legitimate 0.1 response. Legitimate 0.1.
Is that typical or is that unique to you, do you think?
I only worked for one prior work comp firm before this. My business partner worked at a different prior work comp firm. And the kind of the commonality that our 2 prior firms and legal is that we bill in 0.1.
And you do that because that's what was learned.
That was what was learned, but also it's we don't, when you're billing in 0.5 increments or 1 hour increments and everything, to me, very rarely do you fall exactly on 0.5. You're always going to be like a little bit before, a little bit after for both those things. And the other thing is that, and this harkens back to my patent days, block billing is a big no-no.
What is block billing?
That's where like you just go, oh, well, this took me right around maybe 3 hours, and you just bill the 3 hours. Or, oh, this took me 5 hours, and you do that. That's a big no. That raises all kinds of ethical flags.
So if a customer gets a bill or sees a bill that is a nice, clean, round number, it's probably inaccurate.
Well, I don't know about that, because here's the thing. It's
That was a question, not a statement.
It's my thing. It depends. It could be inaccurate, but again, what I've also told attorneys, like, look, if something legitimately took you 1.0 hours, not 0.9 or 1.1, if it legitimately took you that, then go ahead and do it. Don't round down and don't round up just because it looks cleaner. If something took you exactly 2.0 hours, don't round down and do not round up. You bill your time, accordingly. And bill it. And but again, in my experience, just by doing daily billing entries, by reviewing daily billing entries, by working with attorneys doing daily billing, you're most likely going to be, between the 0.1 and 0.9, and just in terms of where you're going to land, and rather than just being these clean 2.0, 3.0 numbers. But they do happen, and they don't happen super rare.
All right. You seem like a very nice guy. So this might be a little bit outside your comfort zone, but what is your biggest complaint about the system? Because I don't know, I'm very anti-establishment, and I think that, I don't know, I just question everything. I know that there are good people, or the majority of people are good people, ethical people, do things the right way. I know that your firm is extremely ethical, and you guys do things the right way, but this is your neighborhood, not mine.
Yeah.
You know more than I do about the players in this space, about your competition, about the schooling and all of that stuff. What is your biggest complaint about the legal space? It doesn't necessarily have to be work comp, just in general. What is your biggest complaint?
I think, I know a lot of defense attorneys will identify with me on this. I understand why the work comp system has to be more applicant. The way it's kind of envisioned is that, look, you have this poor applicant, they don't have a lot of resources. They filed a claim, but then you have the, big insurance company that's going to defend it. So they're going to have a lot more resources to throw at this. But I think it's gone really to the extreme, in that you're always looked at as like the big bad, defense attorney representing the evil insurance company. It's just not like that. I have to say that in my years of experience, every insurance adjuster I've worked with has been very they haven't been, oh, how do we
avoid paying here?
Screw this applicant out of their money. That has never, ever come up. It has always been legitimate discussions of, and I think more people need to know that, and I think especially the other side needs that. They're asking, okay, well, we interviewed the employer. Seems like this injury actually did happen. They're asking all the right questions. They're doing the proper investigation, and by and large, they're doing right. They're doing right by it. I mean, so I think this kind of like the stigma of the insurance companies just trying to kind of weasel the way out. I have not seen that. I really have, and I think that if a lot of that, I think that the way things are done and the way things are is that you kind of have that aura in the background of, well, the defense attorney is representing the big bad insurer. Yeah. And a lot of times, they're injured, and, the system should be, slightly leaning towards the applicant because of just the amount of resources that are available. But it doesn't mean that the insurance company is doing anything bad or doing anything unethical or just trying to, screw the applicant. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I think I would agree with most of that. I think where we would differ is the amount of resources on either side should not play a factor in any sort of, it shouldn't. It should. So the system should equalize by not paying attention. It equalizes the outcomes, or sorry, the chance of outcomes by right and wrong or truth versus we have to give them a little bit of an advantage because the other side has resources. I don't know, maybe I'm saying that wrong, but yeah, I think that going into a battle already disadvantaged because you have more, if that makes, like, the insurance company's already at a disadvantage. That doesn't lend towards truth to me. Or
No, I understand where you're coming from that, but that's also kind of how criminal law is done as well. You know, except in the way of like, well, look, we're
like
gonna
beyond a reasonable doubt.
right, we're gonna assume that this person is innocent until we prove it. So already the state, which is already at a disadvantage of doing that. Now you look at what the risks are. The risks are in work comp, and this is not the right way of looking at things, because just because the insurance company has money doesn't mean it's their job to pay out to whoever says that they have a claim. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that. But when you look at the kind of like the risks of it, well, if the applicant loses, this is somebody whose livelihood, at least for a temporary basis, like disability and stuff, is at risk. They have a lot more to lose by not having this money coming towards them versus an insurance company where it's like, okay, it's a very small percentage of the amount of money that they have. Similarly with criminal law, what happens if the state allows a, actual criminal loose in society? Well, society is at risk. This person who should be locked up is now walking around, but society is at risk. Well, what happens if you put an innocent person? Well, you lock up their entire freedom. And so because of the individual impact, I think that's the reason why we lean a little bit more towards large institutions and large groups of people of being slightly disadvantaged towards individual freedoms and
So I think it should be okay, so let's take criminal law, for example. The state files or accuses somebody of something. The onus is on the state to prove that.
Right.
Like, whatever you're claiming, it's your job to prove it. I think it should be the same in the work comp system. If the injured worker is accusing and suing the employer, not the insurance company,
right,
the employer, the onus is on you to prove that. And I feel like it's opposite. The onus is on the employer. Hey, prove that they're lying. I think that's ass backwards. But again, I'm ignorant from Indiana. So it just doesn't, that doesn't seem right to me. And again, I'm ignorant. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing something. But the onus should be on the injured worker and their attorneys to prove that this did happen.
Well, and there are some states that actually
no matter the resources.
No, agreed. And there are some states whose workers' compensation systems are more geared towards that. I've never practiced workers' comp in any other state, but I do know other defense attorneys that have practiced in other states. And from states like Florida, I've heard it's very much kind of like that, where, look, they have we're able to file work comp, but in terms of the evidence that is being put forward and the not necessarily the duties, but like the how should I say this, process is a little bit more even keel in terms of like what is on.
Okay, so your biggest complaint is that maybe they've leaned a little bit too much towards the. So if you were in charge, had the magic wand, how would you change this system? Is there one change or several changes that you would make without getting you in trouble?
There'd be a lot of like little changes. I want to say there really isn't one major thing that I would do. There'd be like a bunch of like small, like little changes. I guess one of the things I've seen where I think things work, I'm like, hey, this is actually how the workers' compensation should be. Alternative dispute resolution, ADR. ADRs. I like the way how ADR is done. That really is kind of like that should be what the workers' compensation system should be striving to achieve, because you have people that get hurt, but things are done very civilly, very, streamlined and everything. And from what I've seen being just, satellite involved with those kind of programs in the past, is that this is really kind of like the most optimized work system that I've seen in the state. So something, I guess the best way to say it is that to try to maybe move towards something kind of like an ADR is how I would think, that kind of bring things into balance a little bit.
And that put you out of business?
No, not necessarily, because you still, the ADR program still hire defense attorneys, and then injured workers as part of ADR program still hire applicants attorneys. The difference is that you have an ombudsman.
Right, it's not in the work comp system.
Right, it's not in the work comp system and stuff. But I mean, again, when you see how that works, how things are done, it's a very efficient process. And
trying to say is that the state is inefficient. That doesn't sound right. Interesting, man. Okay, sorry, I don't think I ever let you answer this, but are there any inherent conflicts, like some of the examples that I laid out with, how insurance companies make money versus how they pay out on claims, or like how a broker gets paid?
On top of my head, I really can't think of anything. The only thing that really kind of comes to mind, but it's really more of just an attorney thing, is that there is this internal battle, especially for like younger, newer attorneys, of beating your billable hours and then being able to justify stuff. So one of the things that is very difficult for whatever field you get into, whatever type of law you do, is the amount of time you're working on something versus justifying your bill, and that is a conflict, and that you're trying to meet your billable hours, but also you need to act ethically. So where a lot of that stress comes from is younger attorneys just overworking themselves, because a lot of times you just kind of like, one of the best examples I like to give is that, when I first started doing patent law, there'd be a response to the USPTO that would, the maximum you can bill on it was maybe like 2.3, 2.4 hours per the client. When I was starting off, it would take me 5-6 hours to make sure I'm doing it right. So you have to kind of eat that time. So it puts more pressure on you. So I feel like a lot of attorneys, they kind of get this pressure to be able to try to, get more efficient and do that. But as you kind of go along longer, eventually you'll be doing it in real time. It takes you actually 2.2 hours, you build it 2.2 hours. And then that way, when you work your not 8-hour day, because no attorney works an 8-hour day, but when you work your 10, 12-hour day, you'll be able to, recoup on those actual 10, 12 hours.
So what's your favorite thing about being an attorney? Not necessarily work on, but just as a profession. If somebody's thinking about being an attorney out there, what's the best thing about it? And like real talk, like what's the best thing? Is it having that ESQ at the end of your name, Esquire, or is it the just how the respect that you get because of it? Or I'm just throwing out examples.
No. What's
your favorite thing about being an attorney?
Those are really good examples. I think for me, one of the best things is especially, with insurance adjusters that we work with pretty closely, when you get a call from them saying, hey, this isn't your case, but I need advice on how to handle this. Or, hey, I've got a file review. This case may go to you, but I need some advice on how to do this. When people are truly seeking out your advice and really want your thoughts on it. Because a lot of times, when you're working as an attorney, you feel like you're just kind of going through the whole, ABC. Okay, let me look at this claim, do this. We got the initial file review out. Okay, let's set the depo. Let's do this. You're just kind of going through kind of lockstep in terms of like the processes and procedures of how to move this thing. And, you kind of put out your advice out there, and then sometimes, you have the roundtable with the client to figure out and make sure you're on the same page and stuff. But when you're kind of the go-to person for somebody that really needs advice, it does make you feel good. Like, hey, wow, they really value my opinion, and they really want to know what I have to think about it and stuff. And, I will have to admit, we have to go to trial and stuff, and you dress up in a suit, and you kind of walk in and everything. It does make you feel like a little.
All right, so it's a good feeling being an expert. And
Yes.
It's a good feeling important. It is. Okay, what's your least favorite thing?
Oh, gosh.
So what would you warn somebody about? Like, hey, I want to be an attorney. Like, You may want to think twice on that one, because why?
You know, I think one of the big things is that, look, most of the people you deal with in this business are good people that you can talk to, you can work with and stuff. There are a few, bad actors out there that won't react or respond rationally, just like in any other business and just like out there in life. If you accidentally cut off somebody, most people are maybe a little upset. You wave at them, hey, I'm sorry, girl. There's a small percentage of the population that is just going to escalate.
Get out with a gun.
Yeah, exactly. And you do deal with the other side. There are some people that will just
they got an axe to grind.
Yeah, act in bad faith or just be very, very combative and everything. And you kind of wonder, like, what's going on with this person and everything. And you just have to realize that you're going to encounter people like this no matter what field you have. But in law, it's especially, I want to say it's especially stressful, especially for younger attorneys, because you're trying to do a good job, trying to get a result. That's the main thing. I think as a defense attorney, one of the things that I try to tell the younger attorneys getting into this is that, look, we're trying to get a good result. The process is the process, but we're trying to get a good result. And when you're really results driven of getting the best possible outcome for your client, and you're dealing with somebody that's highly irrational, that is not listening to reason, that is just dragging things out and making things a lot more, I think that creates a lot of added stress because, how do you deal with an irrational person? And it's just something you just have to deal with. Look, it comes with the territory. There's going to be irrational people in every field that you deal with. And, your job is to be a zealous advocate for your client, keep your cool, keep a level head, and operate with integrity. And as long as you check those things off.
Is being an attorney, so the outside world, how we see attorneys is that you guys have all of this hidden knowledge. And is there truth to that, or is it just VO? So FIO, figure it out.
Yeah.
Is there, if somebody has a good figure it out about them,
yeah,
in theory, would they make a good attorney?
Yes.
Or is it, no, I went to this secret school and they taught me these secret skills that you only get with your Juris Doctorate?
So here's a lot of it is figure it out. Work comp, you're kind of in a unique sphere and a niche in that, you deal with a lot of the same problems over and over again. So I want to say, like, when you start off doing work comp, after about 6 months, you've learned about 60, 70% of it, which is huge. After about a year, you're probably getting closer to about 80 or 90, and there are some people, that are just walking law libraries of, what to happen. But a lot of it is
constitutional scholars.
Yeah, exactly. But when you, from law school and from just practicing, you develop a figure it out personality. I may not know the answer, but I know where to look and how to get to it and how to analyze and figure it out and stuff.
I think that's the number one skill to being an entrepreneur, is having a figure it out about you, because 99% of what you do as an entrepreneur, you don't already know.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, payroll, HR,
Yeah.
legal, marketing, sales, whatever. You don't know most of it.
Yeah.
Most of the fires that come up every single day, you've never handled before.
True.
Every fire seems to be unique.
True. Yeah.
So you have to have that figured out about you.
True. Yeah. And I've always been really honest with my clients too. Like if I get a call from an adjuster, they'll ask me, hey, what do I do in this situation? I openly say, you know what? I don't know. I've never encountered this, but you know what? Give me to the end of the day. Let me look into this. Let me talk to some people. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't talk about, is that it's a very collaborative effort. Especially if you have a really good team and a really good running firm. People ask those questions. Hey, what do you think about this? They'll do a group chat. What do you think about this? What do you think about this strategy? And then we all kind of put our heads together to kind of do it. Because it's like, hey, that's an interesting problem. I've not heard this type of fact pattern before. And then we kind of throw in our 2 cents. So I think by our very nature, it is kind of very figure it out, but it's also, you want to use the resources. If you're at a firm with a lot of people with knowledge, why wouldn't you bring a problem across their table and say, hey, what do you think of this? Because we're all trying to do the best job we can. And I think going into this industry, you do kind of have that type A personality of, I want to win. I want to get the best outcome. And it's not, it's not about ego of, well, this is my idea. I don't want to take their idea. It's like, no, like I'm one of the founding partners of legal. There are things that come across where I put in the group chat, hey, what do you think about this strategy? What do you think about this? Because the idea is I wanted to get the best possible outcome for my client. And so there may be somebody that knows more about the subject than I do. And if they do, I want to know it. I want to be able to do that for my client. That's what they're paying us to do.
So one of my trademarks, I guess, is that I am very informal. I'm very informal. So like whenever I quit my job and started our own thing, I burnt all my suits, literally, like on
Really?
fire. On fire, yeah.
Good for you. I love it.
Yeah, I'm not a suit and tie guy, and I became obsessed with how do you say being genuine, like genuineness? I don't know if that, like,
Genuineness.
I don't know if that's a word, but in being genuine, I don't care if people like me or don't like me. I am what you get.
Yeah.
You get what I am. And I think that I've also grown an annoyance of things that are formal because it seems disingenuous. If I read anything that an attorney wrote, I'm like, that's not how normal people talk.
Yeah.
No, like it's not being fake. Just tell me again, why don't use 100 words when 10 will do? Do you find being an attorney is more formal, or is that just a very small component of being an attorney? And I think that one example that I can use, that's my issue with human resources too, right? Like document everything and blah, blah, blah. Like, dude, like I'm living the real world. What are you talking? I don't document arguments that I have with my wife. Like I do it if we have a disagreement with an employee. In forms of communication, is 100% of how people communicate you via email?
I'd have to say so, yeah.
Okay.
Most
That's how people communicate with me is text.
so
Like, even my clients, I'm like, email's the worst way to get a hold of me. That's not how I live my life. Shoot me a text like my cousin would, or, my spouse would, or
Yeah.
my brother would. Send me a text or pick up the phone and call me. Like, I don't know that. And it goes all the way back to the very beginning of our conversation. And somebody had told you, this is a relationship business. And I think that that's how you build genuine relationships. It's tough for me to build a genuine relationship via email.
that is true. So a lot of times is, with my clients, if we're sending out emails, it's just to exchange little bits and pieces of information, but almost always it culminates to, hey, I found out X, Y, and Z because I work. So a lot of times I'm sending out emails at 9, 10 o'clock. So I'm sending out emails saying, hey, look, we got surveillance back on this. We got this result. We got this medical report, X, Y, and Z. Let's roundtable a few claims. Let's have a call. And we will do a Teams call where we'll all have our cameras on. First 5 minutes guaranteed is just asking about, hey, how's everyone doing? How's, all this? Because I like having that FaceTime. I like having those relationships and stuff because it helps out when, if they have a concern, I'm more likely to be receptive of it, or be able to pick up on it, or, anticipate or feel their, maybe reluctancy to something and then be like, hey, are you actually okay with this plan of action? Or do you want me to change it up a little bit? And I just feel like it's a lot more conducive to, moving things forward. Obviously, with dealing with applicants, attorneys, a lot of the communication is just through emails. Because again, we may be working different hours. Obviously, I prefer to have texts or, phone calls and everything, but just by its very nature, 90+% of the communication is through emails, which is a very sterile way of communicating subject.
So, yeah, and I understand that things need to be official. Like, hey, this is an official legal statement from an attorney. I have to put it in email so it can be attached to the file, which is part of permanent record, at the end of the day. So this is my attempt to make your industry more efficient, to speed things up. So if you were going to rank text, email, phone call, whatever, in order of most efficient, what's the most efficient? Second, third? Yes. And that is our primary way of communicating when it comes to the legal industry. So I saw a commercial the other day, and this is what made me think of it. I believe it was called FirstNet. I think that's what it's called. I may be wrong there, but it's a program by AT&T for first responders, police, and government officials, I believe. It's a way for them to communicate that's not, iMessages or phone. It's like their own little closed network of communication. If there was a Slack type, are you familiar with Slack? It's like a Teams group chat.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Okay, so it's or a WhatsApp or whatever. If every claim that came up opened a new group chat between the attorney, the adjuster, and the employer and the applicant, would that be quicker?
I think that'd be able to. I think that could be quicker, and it'd definitely be a lot more efficient the way it would be.
And that transcript ends up being in the file at the end.
Perfect.
So they have to consider that official.
Because that answers my other question I was going to have. The reason why I think it's actually flipped, instead of, obviously being on the phone, a 5-minute phone call with an adjuster is worth 20 emails, 20 long emails, because you're able to get through stuff really quickly.
Right.
However, the caveat to that, and hence why I think a lot of people do things in email, is not because of the efficiency, because email is woefully inefficient. It's for documentation.
The official nature of it.
It's the document. This person gave approval for $10,000 in settlement. They tell me that over the phone. I've never had this ever happen to me because I've had authority given to me over the phone. But I've heard of circumstances where, if a supervisor doesn't agree with that deal, the adjuster may say, "Oh, well, I didn't give authority. Well, show me the proof." I've heard that happen.
It wasn't written down. It didn't happen.
Right. Now, I have never personally experienced that, and the people that I work with haven't ever experienced that. But I've heard that through, second, third hand of people, at other firms that has happened to them, hence why that. And I think a lot of it is just the CYA nature of it, of just having everything in writing, even though that is really not the most efficient way of getting your information.
Yeah. So we'll end on this. I'll tell you a quick story.
Please.
My partner, Josh, me and my partner, Josh, I got into a big account, publicly traded company, and I was very green, very new, I think less than a year, or maybe a year into the insurance industry. And this company said, "Hey, we will allow you to work for us for free." I'm like, "All right, great. Prove to us what you can do over the next 6 months. If you do well, we will give you our business." And it was with claims. And so I'm like, "All right, deal." And me not being the claims person, yeah, deal. So and we were working for this other firm, and I went to Josh. I'm like, "Hey, you're the claims guy, right? Do you mind working on this?" And he's like, "Yeah, dude, I'll help you out." I'm like, "All right, cool." So we go to the owner of the company and the CFO, and we say, "Hey, we got this deal." And they say, "Well, you just can't work on it during work hours because we're not getting paid." And I'm like, "All right, whatever." Like, that was a red flag. So Josh had to come in on weekends, come in early, stay late to work on this huge national account. It was really weird to me because this is the biggest account that's ever came through this firm, potentially.
Right.
And so Josh kicked ass on it. And a couple months in, I went to the owner and the CFO, and I took Josh down to the office, and I'm like, "Hey, I think that if we get this account, Josh should get some commission on this." Because I'm not doing anything on it. But Josh is like having, 3-hour-long claim reviews and stuff like that. And if we get the account, he deserves some commission. And they're all like, yeah, we agree. 6 months go by, we get the account. He killed it, we get the account. And the next month, commission checks come out. So I go down to Josh's office, and I'm like, "Dude, great job. Congrats on the commission, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "Oh, I didn't receive anything." I'm like, "Oh, that's weird. Let's go down and let them know."
Yeah.
So I grabbed Josh, and we walked down and say, "Hey, remember that conversation we had? We were sitting right here, and about if we get the deal, Josh deserves commission, blah, blah." And the CFO looked at us and said something I'll never forget. He said if it wasn't written down, then it didn't.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, ultimately some fuck yous were thrown around, and within 30 days we left. And I think that experience really jaded me on just the idea, whether it's logical or not, about make sure everything is documented. That's the reason I have this. Like, that's how I do business. And it doesn't mean I don't understand why things need to be official and recorded and written down and stuff like that. But it was a lesson that I learned, and maybe the source of a lot of my jadedness when it comes to some of the writing downs. But maybe I'll invent a Slack channel like type thing, group chat that attorneys and adjusters and applicant attorneys and the employers can all streamline communication. I mean, if you guys are able to shave off, say, 10 days, average life of a claim, I scale that across all the claims, it's extremely significant, right? And I guarantee days are lost because you have to work through email. Days, which those days you still have to pay TTD. Those in that TTD counts towards employers' X mods. The X mods impact their premiums, and that premium sticks with you for 4 or 5 years. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, that when these claims happen, they are long lasting for employers. It's not a standalone deal. This is what we paid out and we're done. That's on their record for the next 4 years. And they have to pay an increased premium because they had that. Even if that year was still profitable. Well, now if a couple of those happen a year, we need more premium, because if a couple of those happen a year, the insurance company loses money. They're not in the business of losing money. And so if we're able to streamline anything, it works at scale. And that's why we utilize we try to use the same team on things. So you guys know what we expect, when we expect it, how we expect it. There's no learning curve. All right, we just shaved off 3 days of getting to know each other. You have my cell phone. If you need something, text me, call me. So those are...
I think you should really look into that, because I think especially if you're able to get the applicant's attorneys on board on utilizing, because I think one of the biggest just time sinks that we deal with is getting communication back from applicants' attorney. We a lot of times, especially with our team, when an adjuster says, "Hey, make an offer to this applicant's attorney," I want to say pretty much same day, we have a communication going out to applicant's attorney communicating. We like to strike when the iron's hot and do that and try to get these things going. It takes weeks sometimes to get an answer out, months sometimes to get an answer out. And then that's why a lot of times the defense attorney will file for a hearing of, "Hey, we're trying to get a deal going. Applicant's attorney is not responding. Can they at least show up to a hearing? Because at least I can get some 5-10 minutes of phone time with them." And that's one of the biggest things. So if you're able to get them involved on that, huge time save.
Yeah, I mean, so like government workers, government officials, they use Telegram. Have you heard of that? It's a what's it called? Encoded or encrypted messaging back and forth. Yeah, they're not using iMessages or texting back and forth. They all use Telegram or like a WhatsApp or whatever, right? Some sort of encoded on both sides or encrypted. Interesting. Okay, man. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you, they're having work comp issues or they're looking to test somebody new out, how do people get a hold of you?
You can email me at sean@emlegal.net. You can go to our website, emlegal.net as well, and then just reach out and contact us there.
Are you on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, yeah.
Yeah. Do you check your messages on LinkedIn?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I check pretty regularly. And by the way, it was you and Josh that a little over 2 years ago when we were starting the firm was the ones that said, get on LinkedIn and be active on it. So took your advice.
All right, cool, man. Well, I'll put that on the episode and in the description below so people can get a hold of you. Sean Eggers, founding partner of EM Legal. Thanks, brother.
Thank you,
Appreciate
man.
you.
Appreciate it.